Online, please let me know whether if you can't hear, there's someone who will make sure that everything works on the technical side. Right. So one of the reasons for me to do this is, of course, a number of people who ask me the same question, and I'm sure they ask you also the same question. If you're in IT, for instance, what is this ChatGPT, right? Actually, it's part of a class of applications, let's say, which can be generally known as generative AI. But I want to kind of, it's hard when the audience is really broad. So some want to just get an idea and others want to get technical details, and others have theoretical interest, and yet others have philosophical interest. So because of this, this talk is trying to please everyone a little bit, right? But no one fully, right? So there has to be a follow-up if you want to find out more about this area in any of those angles. Yeah, so let me, so I've titled this, what do we do with this technology? We can fight it, right? We can fear it, or we can friend it, right? These are the three options. Well, there may be some more, right? We'll talk about that. And in the middle, I want to just take some questions so that, you know, we don't keep questions to write at the end. So this is what we're going to talk about. Actually, this is not 4 equal sections. The first section is just one slide, right? Basically to get around the kind of the hype, a lot of the words, the phrases that are used in this area. The second one is about what's behind this technology, right? And after that, I will stop a little bit and take questions, right? And the third one is, of course, the main part, right? And this is an area where you, as well as those who are online, probably have as much experience as me, right? And then finally, the last one, you know, how should we think about this, right? A little more philosophical, I guess, not exactly philosophical, but a little more beyond the surface, right? So hopefully everybody will get something, even though nobody will get everything. Right. So what's this all about? Right. Actually, the IT industry is very famous for creating a lot of acronyms, a lot of jargon, right? And so we like to do this, and part of it is marketing, and then there's general confusion, right? So actually, if you look at the area of AI or machine learning, data science, these things have a lot of overlap. Right? This is an incomplete but and partial Venn diagram, right? So artificial intelligence is shown as like the big thing, within which we have something called machine learning, and within which probably there is some smaller subset called deep learning, which is becoming bigger and bigger all the time. And then data science is kind of related to all this, but it also has some aspects that are not inside this, right? But if you're interested in data science, it's a combination primarily of the 3 kind of areas: computing, and then math and stat, and then the domain, right? Is really crucial. This third aspect, most people don't imagine. They think that, you know, we can have AI without domain knowledge, right? And so in those intersections, there are some interesting things, such as machine learning and statistical reasoning and so on, right? So
sorry for interruption. Please put the slides in the presentation mode, please.
collection of almost unrelated technologies, right, that have come together. We will see how they have come together. Right. So as I said, there's only one slide to talk about what's this all about. But what should we know? And as someone, I come to this again, so I have to self-declare, right? I come to this as someone who has been kind of playing around with what are called language models over about 20 years, right? And before that also a little bit. So I'm coming from that side, right? And if you have read these articles, all of them refer to something called LLM, or large language model. So before we go there, I want to just talk about where we've come in terms of AI itself. Let me see. Right.
Excuse me, Dr. Ruvan.
Yes.
The slides are not changing for the online participants. It's still the
Slides
title.
are not visible?
It's visible, but only the title slide is visible.
Oh, okay.
So you have to put it on presentation mode.
So you only see the slide, title slide yet?
It's not in the presentation mode.
Oh, it's coming in the presentation? But our internal thing shows the cover. So can you see this now? What's the slide you can see?
Yeah, it says, what should I know? Search, knowledge, presentation.
You're not sharing the slideshare mode. You're not sharing the slideshare mode, so you have to share the other screen.
And put full screen presentation.
There it is.
And then go screen sharing. Moment, stop sharing. Okay. And then go to your presentation. And put it on the presentation mode. This is not a presentation. No. Yes. Okay. Now go to the and then chat last week.
That's correct.
This is correct. This is correct now.
That's okay now.
Yes, sir. Now it's visible. Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. Sorry about that. Right. So, so we're going kind of taking a absolutely fast walk through what is AI, right? Artificial intelligence. And this is a long history starting from the 50s. I'm not going to go through all of these, but you can just see the kind of the progress. And a lot of things in AI were to do with search and knowledge, representation, reasoning, planning, things like that. And you can see there's like the 1970s and 80s were like the AI winter. That is, there was nothing happening and people are not funding this research. So what changed since then is a particular aspect of implementing AI, and that is learning. Right. So learning now is like a cornerstone of AI. Right. Supervised learning, which I like to represent using that the diagram on top. Right. Typical programming, we have data and the program, which we put into a computer, and it results in some output. Right. So you can represent supervised learning, and this supervised learning is what most people call machine learning, right? You can think of that as putting the data and the output and arriving with the program, right? That's like a simple way, an analogy of saying what supervised learning is. Unsupervised learning is another type of machine learning, and that is where we kind of mine for patterns in the data, right? Without giving explicit examples from the past, right? For supervised learning, we have to give examples from the past. And then the third aspect is reinforcement learning, where we don't give past experience, but we kind of give hints or rewards to our system to kind of make it behave properly. And this is what typically children or even animals, right? You can train animals by giving rewards, right? And typically that's how you train monkeys and all these things to, do what you want them to do. But if you think about it, that's what parents do with children also, right? Not with food and all, well, with food and all also sometimes, but with words of praise and words of admonition, right? Both sides. So you reinforce something in them, right? And this has become like really crucial type of learning in kind of generative AI that we see. Right. So classic case study of applying these machine learning technologies is in this thing called AlphaGo, which was part of DeepMind, a company in London that Google bought, of course, right? And there is a game called Go in mostly in China, in the Far East, right? It's a complex game, right? And estimated to be like 300 times more complex than chess, right? So machine learning people were very interested to try and solve this. So they collected a lot of human games, right? Data from human games, about 160,000 games, right? So this, obviously, this is like a difficult exercise, right? Over a long period of time. And then they set up a match between their system and Lee Sedol, who was the 18-time world champion, right? A South Korean. And then they set up this tournament of best of 5 games, right? And for the first time, the system was able to defeat Lee Sedol 4-1, right? That's like a huge margin, right? In Go, unlike in chess, there's no draw, there's no stalemate, right? One side wins. It's a bit like Othello, the one side, Weerasinghe or Othello, right? So then we have, so they didn't stop there. DeepMind didn't stop there. They wanted to try something else. And what was that? They removed the game knowledge from AlphaGo. That's why they call it AlphaGo 0. They removed the game knowledge, game of Go, that 160,000 games, that knowledge it removed, and it called it AlphaGo 0, and it made it play AlphaGo, which now is the world champion, right? By that time. And they made them play each other 40 hours. And in 40 hours, I forget exactly how many. I mean, that is like millions of games, right? For a computer, that's the advantage, right? And then they set up 100 match. You can have with a human, you can't have 100 match. This takes a long time, a single game of Go. But on a computer, that's fine. So 100 match tournament between AlphaGo 0 and AlphaGo. And this is the result, right? So 100-0. AlphaGo 0 won every single game, right? So you can see the power of reinforcement learning, right? So you can see that it beat its teacher, right? and there may be some questions about this. Maybe we can take it up as Q&A time. And then they didn't stop there. They wanted to see how far this will go. So they took they removed this knowledge again of the Go, because once it played those 40 hours, it got very good at Go, AlphaGo 0. So they removed the Go part, Alpha 0, right? And they selected the top chess program that was there currently. Okay, chess, by now, a grandmaster can't beat any of these big chess programs like Stockfish. So they played each other, Alpha 0 and Stockfish, for just 9 hours, right? You can see the number of hours you need to play, because those games finish much faster than Go games, right? At just playing 9 hours, this Alpha 0 was able to beat the Stockfish, the top chess program, 72 to nothing, right? Why is that? Why not 100 nothing? Why do you think? In chess, you don't have to always win or lose, right? Right? So the balance 28 for what? They were all stalemate, draw, right? They were draws. So basically everything was won by this program. And from then on, actually, they kind of made Alpha a brand, and they also did a thing called AlphaFold. Right? Those who are interested in bioinformatics or something, you can look up. AlphaFold is currently the best program to predict the structure of proteins. Okay, so now I move the camera to kind of focus on my area, which is language modeling, right? Language modeling. So humans were like really curious from the beginning to see how language works, right? Human language, not programming languages, human language, right? So initially, the only people, normally computing people have to go to domain experts, and the domain expert in human language are the linguists. So we went and asked the linguists, how does language work? And they said, well, there are these rules, right? Grammar rules. And then, but sometimes they are violated, right? There are exceptions. Every rule has an exception. Unfortunately, the exception also sometimes has an exception, right? So you have thousands of rules which interact with each other and have exceptions. And so this is how language modeling in computers happened in the 60s, 70s, and so on. But somewhere around the 80s, people said, okay, this is not going to work. Let's try to learn these language models from text, right? So you take lots and lots of books and various things and try to see the way the words are really, in order, and try to learn some statistics, right? About which word can come before which word or after which word, and so on, right? And these are best known by the term n-grams. So n-gram modeling. N-gram is how many tokens, how many words before the current word do you look in order to predict the next word, right? So if it's bigram, that means you only look at the previous word to predict the next word. Trigram, you look at the previous 2 words to predict the next word. Quadgram, 5 gram, 6 gram, you can imagine how you can kind of learn this from text, right? And then people realize that, okay, 3, 4, 5 words ahead doesn't make really, really strong models. We need longer sequences, right? Because if I talk to you about, I don't know, let's say some character, Nelson Mandela or something, and then 2 or 3 sentences later, I say he, at once, I'm referring to Nelson Mandela, right? So there are lots of that he will not be able to be interpreted unless I had in the context that this was about, who this was about, right? So we wanted to have longer context. And this is where deep learning came in, right? Before deep learning, there were some neural language models, but most neural language models are connected with deep learning. RNN, which are recurrent neural networks, LSTM, long short-term memory units, and then sequence-to-sequence models, all kinds of these things, right? And these allowed us to look at, let's say, a window of 512 or 1024 or 2048, tokens before in the window, right? And so language models became stronger, more powerful. And of course, in 2018, there's a very interesting paper that was published by Google called, some people in Google call Attention is All You Need. And that was the birth of what is called a transformer, right? Transformer, not like the, those, what is in the movies, right? It's the same name. So in the word GPT, that T is transformer, right? So these transformers, 2018 completely revolutionized the language modeling area, right? Now, the main task of all language modeling is to predict either the next word or the next phrase. And you have seen some of these in predictive text, right? When you're typing things, it predicts the next word, or the current word, it predicts the next word, it predicts sometimes the entire sentence, right? And you get it in the browser, in all kinds of places, right? But it's with these transformer models that you could actually start predicting the next paragraph. And in fact, the rest of the story. So you start a kind of story. I don't know, Mahi and Sira were two friends, and they wanted to play politics, and then you let it go. And the large language model takes over and will, be very creative. You can try. How many have tried that use of ChatGPT? That is, you give some beginning of a story and ask it to complete. Anyone who has tried that? Actually, that's what GPT, BERT, all those models did, right? Not ChatGPT, right? GPT. GPT had initially, I can't remember the year, but then GPT-2, then GPT-3, also available for about 2.5 years. But it didn't catch the people, because you could only people who are interested in this field could actually get it to do these things. And so something that OpenAI did that kind of changed the whole thing was they made a chat interface to GPT, right? And that's what has kind of made this now come to us. Right. So from language models to these large language models. So the first, if you trace back, the first kind of real large language model is something called Elmo. And I'm not going to talk about these architectures because they are quite complex and all that. But for those who are interested in, coming from statistics, you will think, normally we use models to reduce the number of parameters, right? So typically, if you have 100 data points and you can fit a single line, right, a linear equation, you can throw the 100 data points and just have 2 parameters, the slope and the intercept, right? With that, you can describe the whole data set. But these models are so big, right? Elmo had about 94 million parameters in the model, right? So a straight line has only 2 parameters, but if you have a parabola, you have more parameters, and if you have a complex shape, you have more parameters, right? Like that. This is 94 million parameters. It's a bit mind-boggling. But then soon it had big, competitors, right? The big companies, Google, Meta, OpenAI, right? These companies started creating these because they have massive computing resources, right? It's very difficult even for the largest Sri Lankan company to put money to create something from scratch like this, right? So GPT 3 or 3.5, the one that powers ChatGPT is estimated to have cost between 8 and 12 million US dollars, right? To train, between 8 and 10 million US dollars. So that's obviously not possible for any normal size company, right? And the important thing here is that there is some so-called emergent behavior, right? If you've seen these birds flocking, right, that formation, somebody figured out 3 simple rules. If you put 3 simple rules to a bird model, after some time, they form into that formation. That's called an emergent behavior. Initially, all the birds are like going where they want, and then they start following this rule, then they form that formation. That's an example of emergent behavior, right? Or you take the shoal of fish. You have seen this fish, right? A huge shoal of fish. How they, there's no one, no leader, but they all go together, right? So that's because that individual behavior, when you put together some emergent behavior, some new behavior emerges, right? So we can see that in the GPT models, by the way, GPT is not the only one. There are BERT and Elmo and so many other models, Roberta and so on. But in the GPT models, we see this transition or this emergent behavior coming in with this somewhere around this 3.5. And this diagram, I'm not sure whether you can see it very well, but you can see that how the number of parameters for these models become higher and higher, right? Unfortunately, it looks like Elmo is not here, but and this is also a little old, right? So GPT-3, which was behind ChatGPT, has 175 billion parameters, right? 175 billion parameters. And it's trained on over 1 trillion tokens, roughly speaking words. They are not really words, but roughly speaking words. The second set of graphs show accuracy on certain tasks. And you can see the accuracy is pretty low when the number of parameters are even millions, right? And then suddenly they all start, right, showing. So that is some indication that there is some emergent behavior that comes into play as the models become bigger and bigger and more complex. Right, so 2022 and actually 2023, not even 2022 November is when OpenAI made ChatGPT available online for normal people. But in 2023 now, there has been an explosion of these large language models, right? And interesting kind of historical accidents also happened, right? So from these 94 million parameters of Elmo, now most probably over 1 trillion parameters in GPT-4, because GPT-4 also does image and audio and things like that, right? And of course, Meta, which is Facebook's parent company, had a large language model, 65 billion parameters. So you can't just go by the number of parameters to see how good it is, right? We will see that when you talk about open source models. It gives us some indication, but that's not the only thing, right? So 65 billion parameters model can still perform really well. It was called Llama, and all these people, OpenAI, Google, all of them have these models. They don't make it widely available, right? They are proprietary. They may give access to you to use them, but not access for you to build with them, right? So, but there was a leak of this Llama model, and that was the beginning of the rise of open source large language models, right? So Stanford University built something called Alpaca, and well, as we write, there are new models, right? Even yesterday I saw mini GPT and things like that. But Vicuña is another model, and both Alpaca and Vicuña have only 13 billion parameters, but you can see how they perform against the big players, right? So interesting question. How do we know this? How can we measure how well these perform? It's very hard, right? So this measurement, the graph at the bar chart at the bottom, is with respect to GPT-4, right? GPT-4, which you have to be in a waiting list, or you have to pay that $20 a month to access, right? So GPT-4 is kind of considered the judge of the other models, right? This is not such a good thing, but there's no other way to do it, right? So obviously GPT-4 will favor GPT-3 and 3.5, right? So that's why you can see ChatGPT scores 100 out of 100, right? By GPT-4. Bard, which is Google's large language model, is scoring 93. Vicuña, right? Bard, I can't remember, but Google's LLM is called Palm, right? It had 540 billion parameters, huge model, right? So there's a distinction between the large language model and these interfaces. Interfaces are all chat interfaces, right? So we have the OpenAI ChatGPT, and then Microsoft put it into Bing Chat, and then Google has put it into Bard, right? That their chat program. And you can see this relatively small open source language model called Vicuña, 13 billion parameters, is at 92% compared to GPT-4 evaluation, right? So how can that be? That can be in the Q&A, right? We can try to answer that question. How can that be, right? But this new phenomenon has really kind of democratized the AI field, right? Open source AI. So just one slide about the GPT phenomenon, right? So OpenAI was initially set up to democratize AI, right? And Elon Musk was one of the founders, right? But has since then changed its stance. Two reasons we can see. One is they needed a lot of money, and the people who had a lot of money was Microsoft. So Microsoft gave them a $10 billion grant or something. And then after that, Microsoft will have a say in what is released freely and what is kept proprietary, right? That's one aspect. But the stated reason for not making this open source is that it's dangerous. Dangerous for like bad actors to have access. By access is not just using they have allowed, but to have access to the model so that they can do something with the model, right? So GPT-3, as I said, has been available via the API for about 2 years, but mostly for text completion, right? Text completion task is you give something and then ask it to continue, right? So you can write stories this way. Right? And then ChatGPT essentially is GPT on steroids. They have, other than, so large language models are examples of unsupervised models, right? You just give lots and lots of text, like all of the text on the web, basically. But that's not the only thing. That's why ChatGPT is different to GPT itself. GPT is generalized, pre-trained transformer. It's a transformer language model, transformer large language model. So that's the first bullet, unsupervised LLM. But on top of that, they have supervised fine-tuning, right, based on human examples. So human says, ask the question and gives an answer. That's familiar to people. Supervised learning. Ask questions, give answers. OpenAI hasn't made that data set even available widely. People have tried to estimate how many such pairs. And there are various estimates. Some people think it's about 600,000 pairs of questions and answers. But even that can't explain the performance of ChatGPT now, because obviously they wouldn't have given the question that you put to it, right? In supervised learning, it can generalize a little bit, but it can't answer a question that is completely unrelated to what it has trained on. And that's where the third bullet comes in, reinforced learning through human feedback, RLHF, right? And this is where they gave this question and they gave a lot of similar answers and asked humans to select the best one, right? And instead of doing like supervised learning, they tried to build a reinforcement learning model. That means based on the human feedback, it learned some ways of determining what is a good answer. That allowed it to generalize to questions that it had not seen before. Unfortunately, no details of these are provided, so we can currently only use these. Right? And as I said, GPT-4 can do image and audio also. So you can see the complexity of these models, GPT-1, 2, 3. 3 is the one that was behind ChatGPT. The token size 2048 means what kind of window it can look. So it can be 2048 tokens means it can be several sentences, an entire paragraph as input, right? And then continue from there and things like that. On the other side, a number of decoders is, I'll not go into that because that's a bit of a, what do you call, technical thing, but you can imagine roughly as the number of layers of neural networks, right? It's not exactly that, but something like that. Right. So we stop for a breather, right? Any questions for thus far? Any questions? To have a my timing, yeah. Any quick question? Yes. Okay, good. So obviously we have to take it offline, but the question was, how is AlphaGo 0 become better than AlphaGo, right? Is that the case? How the new model is trained by the old one. Okay, so we have to take it at the break, right? After the break, yeah. But yeah, so that's as another question that I kind of threw up is, how do these open source language models that are much smaller perform so well, right? So one trick they did was, now people are sharing their interactions with ChatGPT, right? So they ask this question and they got this answer. And you can see in that interface, you can do one of these two, right? Good or bad. So they collected all the good ones. And so there's a data set called ShareGPT. I forget, maybe about 60,000 such examples, right? So they use that to fine tune, right? And so you can see that's going to happen increasingly. So if you have GPT-4, which is even better, and if you have some input and output from that, you may be able to train a model that does even better, right? Instead of training from scratch, right? Unfortunately, I can't see the online, whether there are any questions online, but hopefully we will take those questions at the Q&A time right at the end. Right, so that was the background, right? But what should I do? That's probably the most important thing. And here, I'm just giving some scenarios. Some of you will be able to identify with them because you have already done that. Others may find new areas, and you may have an area that I don't talk about, right? So why I have said ChatGPT or better or ChatGPT plus is because now there's a huge ecosystem around this, right? So there's a plugin. OpenAI made a plugin architecture to ChatGPT, so you can kind of have different capabilities. And then they also released GPT-4, which can do image and audio. There are also initial work by some new players, text to video. Can you imagine? So you explain something and it creates a video. Currently, the videos are really short, a few seconds, right? But this is the kind of thing people are trying to do. Then these huge models like Llama, Palm, Bloom, and so on, right? These are like, can also be used. Auto GPT and Agent GPT, I'll not really go into that. I'm just putting these so that you can, if you want, go and search. And the new Bard, when Google released Bard in their demo, there were some errors that made them, made their stock go down by some millions of dollars, right? So then they went back to the drawing board, quickly did some damage control, and now yesterday, I think, one of these days, they released their new Bard as a ChatGPT, with that kind of interface, right? And of course, there are lots and lots of others, right? You may hear about. Lingua GPT is something by some two Sri Lankans, not sure if they are students even, but they are in the UK right now. They made an interface for lots of languages, including Sinhala and Tamil. Right? You can go and try to use it. Still not really good. And I also saw Kaputa has done an interface, right, for Sinhala. Lingua GPT has for lots of languages other than Sinhala and Tamil. Kaputa's one is currently only Sinhala, but you can like get some output, like instead of write a poem about something, you can get it to write a kavya about something, right? Okay, so used it. How many have not used it? ChatGPT. In the online audience, you can put your hand up. Right, so in the physical audience, I would say 95% have used it, right? This is the interface, right? Whether you think this is great or not, right? Whether you buy into the hype or not, you have to use it, right? It's a bit like long ago when the calculator was introduced, right, in Sri Lanka. The University of Moratuwa had a big debate whether they should allow students to use it, because they used to use this something called the slide rule, which you have never seen, but you can ask your parents and see. Right? They felt that using the calculator was a bit kind of cheating, right? Because the slide rule, you have to do quite a lot of work to figure out the calculation. Whereas the calculator, you just type it and get the answer, right? So of course, very soon they realized. So today you can't even probably find a slide rule, right? So this kind of thing has happened, right? When I did my graduate studies, I had to go and find research papers, physical research papers, or ask my library to get from another library, that kind of thing. Right? Today we go and Google Scholar or something, we just download the papers, right? To search for something, we have to go and ask several friends, and today we just do a web search, right? If I want to buy something, right, I just do a web search, right? So whether you like it or not, whether you buy into this technology or not, you have to use it, right? Because you can use it in so many different ways, right? And that's why I said not tomorrow. Right? For those in this audience, hardly anyone has not used it. So this is the phenomenon, right? So we know Instagram was like one of the big hits in the 2010. It reached 100 million users in 30 months, right? WhatsApp, actually, that's not users, right? It's I think the number of messages or something. TikTok reached 100 million people in 9 months. And you see ChatGPT had 100 million signups in 2 months, right? And that's like mind-boggling, 100 million, right? So many of you in the physical audience, I realize, are part of this 100 million, may have been part of this 100 million. And this was in 2 months. Now, I don't know the figures. Anybody knows how many now? I think they're not publishing anymore because, but you notice that it's slow, right? It's getting slow, right? Now you go to Bard and it's fast. It doesn't do that, letter by letter thing. It just bang, the whole thing, right? Takes a bit of time, but the whole thing is put at you. But that also may, if it gets popular, it will start getting slower. Yeah, so this is the Bard, new Bard interface, very similar, right? Very simple thing with the chat window right at the bottom. So, but how do you use this? That's what the main part of this talk is. So first, I think it's good to play around, like ask questions like, who are you? Or who is somebody, right? Martin Scorsese or someone, right? There's a film director, right? There's someone you don't know, like say someone says, tells you a person's name and you don't know. So you can ask, right? You can search Google also. Google will give you 10 links, right? ChatGPT will give you 1 para, right? While someone was having a shower recently, discovered the navel, buria, and asked, do all animals have it? What do you think? I didn't know. Right? And I can't see it in my cat or dog, right? I don't know. So I didn't know. So I actually searched this. There are some mammals that don't have umbilical cords, right? They are in the class of marsupials, like the kangaroo and so on. Right? The next example is an example from my family, right? So my daughter, to answer in the school, name 3 reptiles. So we know the standard, crocodile and this and that, right? But she wrote gharial. Anybody knows what gharial is? But she got it wrong, right? But a gharial is a reptile that is endemic to South Asia. So, and it's in the zoo, you can go and see. Right? It's like the crocodile, but the difference is, you will know when I say it, narrow and teeth are jutting out like this, not down and up. You would have seen it in the zoo. I don't know whether it's still alive, right? So, but you can ask for 5 reptiles or 10, I don't know. So, so that's another reason why knowledge in the school system is not knowledge, it's guessing what's in the teacher's head, largely. Right? And maybe in the university also. Otherwise, we are just looking down on teachers. Yeah, they are also teachers, right? What is the least populous country in the world, or what is the lowest point on Earth, and how deep it is? So that's an example of a question. There are 2 parts to it, right? So ChatGPT is clever enough to figure out an answer, one answer to both, or give 2 answers. what is the fastest animal on earth and how fast is it? And then you can ask, what is your goal? Who are you? Are you unbiased? That kind of, so we are going into that philosophical level, right? You can ask. So these are what typically people ask, right? But we want to go beyond that, right? So we want to learn prompt engineering, right? This is not for engineers. This is not for even IT students. This is for normal human beings, right? All human beings, actually we became Google search query engineers over the past several years. Right? Initially, we went and I don't know, we put nanotechnology or computer science or something, and we realized we can't get much. We had to kind of give a better query, right? So now we have got used to how to query Google. Similarly, these things that we put in the chat window are called prompts. Why it was called prompts is because originally in large language models, you kind of start a story. That's the prompt. Then you get it to continue the story. So you give a prompt and it continues, right? Now with the chat interface, it has gone a bit beyond that. And so here's an example from the Gharial thing. If you just ask what is a Gharial, it will give what's on the left, right? But if you say write a blog post on the Gharial, it's a very specific instruction. You get what's on the right, right? I'm sure you can't read it, but it's different, right? And what else can we do? Can we say write a poem about the Gharial? It will do it. I don't want to do it and see, but those who have computers, people who are online, they have computers, you can type that, right? Write a poem about the Gharial and see what it does. Does it do a reasonable job? Right. So the next few slides are domain specific queries. So here's something for language, right? People want to learn language. You are my dictionary. So this is a prompt, right? Not just a question. It's a prompt. You are my dictionary. When I give a word, you will give the dictionary definition, a synonym list, an antonym list, and 3 example sentences using that word. You think it'll work? And then you, by the way, some of these are now a bit ChatGPT specific. Other chat interfaces still coming to this, right? So if you try Bard, for instance, it will do it for the first one, and then it forgot your this memory problem, right? Now, ChatGPT, once you say this, after that, whatever word you give, it will give the dictionary definition, it will give us some synonyms, and it will give some antonyms, samana pada, saha viruddha pada, and then it will give 3 example sentences. Or you can say 5 or whatever number, right? So you give, let's say, I don't know, paradigm. It's a bit of a new word, paradigm. It will give the definition, it will give the synonyms, antonyms, and 3 sentences. And then you ask another. So your input after that is only 1 word, but it's giving all these, right? Then the small problem, because what will happen after that when you don't want it to do it, right? So some people say forget it. Then it tries to define forget. So there has normally we will have some prompts for that. Forget everything, or you give a new. This is called a persona. You give a new persona. You are no longer my dictionary. One thing, you are no longer my dictionary, and then it's okay. Right? Language learning. I want you to act as a German translator, spelling corrector, and improver. I will speak to you in any language, right? Not quite any language, right? Sinhala and Tamil and all are not yet very good. So you can say, I will speak to you in English or something. And you will detect the language, translate it, and answer it, answering the corrected and improved version of my text in German, or I don't know, some other language, French or Spanish, or a lot of the European languages are covered, but maybe Chinese will work, right? Because a lot of text, Hindi may work, you can then check, right? So you can use it as a language learning tool, right? A writing tool, this I think a lot of people have tried. Create an article on outline, right? So if you don't want it to just create everything, right? You don't want it to do everything, right? That's a lazy thing. You want to be involved in it, but you can get it to do an outline or a skeleton, right? Create an article outline for, I don't know, something. Make it concise, yet ensure no information is left out. You can give that kind of information, right? Sometimes you have to say curtail it, because it sometimes goes, and you may have seen, when you ask a simple question, it gives a long answer, right? So sometimes you don't want a long answer. You can you give me a one sentence answer to something like that, or one paragraph answer to this or something, right? You can make it, scope it like that. You can summarize the following content, and you give the content, right? You can summarize papers, articles, right? Even things like suggest 3 metaphors for the benefit, let's say, of an IT degree. I just put it thinking that a lot of you are from IT, but you can say suggest 3 metaphors for the benefits of, I don't know, learning rollerblading or something like that. I don't know. You can try, right? You can try. Yes, so role play. We already saw that the persona is kind of the role play. I want you to act as a stand-up comedian. Right? I will provide you with some topics related to current events, and you will use your wit, creativity, and observation skills to create a routine based on those topics. Right? It's quite it's beyond like a factual thing, right? So this is so the creativity of these models is controlled by something called the temperature of the model, right? Usually it's set to 0.9, right? But you can increase or decrease it to get either only factual things or to get it to do crazy things, right? So 0.9 is like considered like a good value to be in between, right? And this is what makes these systems sometimes do what is called hallucinate, right? I'm not sure where the Bard. So initially when ChatGPT came out, if you said who is and gave your name, it hallucinates. It gives you some nice answers, right? And some of it will also use some knowledge it has of you if it does have anything online, right? Now it just blocks it and it says, I don't know this person. Is it someone I need to know? And it tries to get around that. You can make it even more specific by saying you should also be sure to incorporate personal anecdotes or experiences into the routine in order to make it more relatable and engaging to the audience. And so the first prompt gets you something, you're not happy, you give another conditioning. And then you give your first request. My first request is, I want a humorous take on politics, right? And stand-up comedy. He has to make some jokes about that. My next request is how to become a politician in Sri Lanka. You should try this. Try it. It's really, I mean, it's also quite entertaining, right? How many of you are doing programming here? Programmers? Software developers? No? You're not? No. Okay. But you may end up doing some kind of programming, right? Like, I don't know, HTML or something, right? So here I want you to act like a Python. You can make ChatGPT act like a Python interpreter and give like print statements. Here, print hello world and so on. You can try some. You can try some syntax errors and see what it says. Right? Or I want you to act as a Linux terminal. I will give you commands, and so you give commands and see what it does. Right? Since not many of your programmers, I'm going to. You can see, you can create a cheat sheet for, I don't know, HTML5 or Markdown, or give a bulleted list of for React using Apple or Windows devices, this kind of thing. I want to debug this code, so you put your code and ask what's wrong with this, right? Or SQL, if you're doing database work, you can try this kind of query. I'll switch over, I'll continue because not much interest in the audience, right? This may be more of interest. Okay, music, right? I want you, so this is giving a persona to ChatGPT, because ChatGPT is a general purpose generative AI, right? So I want you to access the composer. I will provide the lyrics to a song and you will create music for it. This could include using various instruments, blah, 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 right? And you can make this as, you can put, different instruments, I don't know, Eastern or Western instruments and things like that. And then you give the title. And I have written a poem named My Sweet Melody to Boy Music or something like that. Or you can give the whole thing. Write a pop song about leaving home to go to university. Right? Pop song. See what it does. And then if you don't like it, you put some additional conditions, right? Like the previous examples. Give me the chords for this song and you just put the lyrics, the words. Another way is to insert the lyrics, right? You give the words of the song. I'm providing you with the beginning song lyrics. Finish the song based on the words above. So it's like continuing a story, you continue the song. Right? You give some example, 1 verse or 2 verses, and tell it to write. You can say, write 3 more verses or something like that. Right? Okay, this may interest. How many of you are employed? Already doing a job? Can't be. I'm sure there are many of you who are doing a job there. I know a lot of you are students also, but if you're a student, then you at some point have to get a job, right? So how can you get help from? I want you to act as an interviewer. I will be the candidate and you will ask me the interview questions for the position of, I don't know, web designer or whatever, right? I want you to only reply as the interviewer. Do not write all the observation or the whole conversation at once. Sometimes if you say, give an interview for this job, it will give the question, answer. So that also, that is also a way to learn, right? But after some time, you want to answer. So you say, don't write all the conversation at once, right? Don't write the whole thing at once. That means ask me, then I reply, you answer, and so on. Right? You can also see, ask it to give a response to each reply you give. How good it was or bad. So see, you can see the power of this is like. Otherwise, you have to go to your uncle or cousin, elder cousin, something, to ask people, right? So here, you still go and ask them, and it's a good thing to ask them still, right? But you can also, you sometimes feel I'm going to worry the person. I can't keep on asking. Right? So I can also learn a bit from this. I'm providing you with my written resume or CV. Generate a summary that elaborates my unique selling points. What is unique about me from my CV? or I'm providing my CV, please review it and suggest improvements or edits. You can try all these prompts. Help me to write a cold email for the position of something to the editor-in-chief of a tech. Cold email means, without them advertising, you should learn this, right? Without them advertising, you're kind of advertising yourself. I'm good at these things. Do you have a job? Kind of, how do you write that? People feel very bad, especially Sri Lankans feel very bad. Oh, I can't do that, no man. They haven't advertised. In these foreign countries, it's a normal thing. Some people just go and give their CVs here and there and everywhere, right? But how do you write it? How do you write like a letter to do that in a nice way? Then, of course, education like this. Some of these is good for teachers. Provide 10 multiple choice questions about maths for an 8th grader. Right? You're also saying very specific things. 5th grader, 10th grader, whatever, right? And then you can fine tune that prompt if you're not happy, right? Then some of the YouTube videos and so on have transcripts. That means the text of the video, right? You copy it and paste it and say, generate 7 questions based on this transcript. So there is, or I don't know, there's the Shakespeare play, right? You copy and paste and then say, generate 7 or 5 or 3 questions based on this transcript. Still not good in Sinhala. Then you can also give plans like this. I have 3 free days a week for the next 2 months. Make me a study plan for learning English. That's quite advanced, right? A study plan. So it will say this and then once it gives a study plan, you can go and ask, give me some activities for this first day's lesson, or resources, activities, things like that, right? Explain the Pythagorean theorem to a primary school kid. This is a nice trick, right? Say you are now supposed to, you're in the 2nd year of the university and you should know something, right? Let's say you should know how to do HTML, let's say. But you can pretend, no? Explain how to create a header and subtitles to a 10-year-old. You're pretending to be a 10-year-old. So then it gives it in a simple way. Or some complex thing like quantum mechanics. Explain quantum mechanics to a school student and see what happens. If you just say explain quantum mechanics, it may give a lot of big jargon and things that you can't understand. Right? We have just begun learning about integers in class. What are some lessons that are likely going to be covered that I can learn early? So this doesn't have to be integers, but it can be any topic, right? So it's a way of making you prepare for the next class, right? What's going to come ahead. You can do this for the PDU courses, right? You can do it. Then you can come prepared, right? So you understand everything. Give me 10 tips on how to maintain attention in class, right? So these kind of things also, right? You can, right? You're falling asleep. So how do you, avoid that? 10 tips, right? I don't know whether it will get, don't eat a heavy meal of rice before you go to class. I don't know whether it will say that. Marketing, actually, they are the people who use this a lot. So I'm not going to really go into this, right? Some people will be a bit cross with me for that. But yeah, as the second bullet, I'm looking for a type of text, means, like attention grabbing or something, right? That will convince who? 18 to 20-year-olds, something like that, right? To sign up for my, I don't know, gym class or art class or guitar playing class or I don't know, whatever, right? By explaining the value it brings and the benefits they'll receive. Right? So if you're, nowadays everybody has to have like a side job, no? Small thing, right? How do you get people for that, right? So you can get help with this kind of write an attractive Instagram caption for, I don't know, something, right? Some product. Write 7 tweets if you're on Twitter, right? That becomes a really important place for certain kinds of marketing. I don't know, generate an X minute, 10 minute, 5 minute, 3 minute, 1 minute video script for YouTube video about our newest, I don't know, service or product. This is not to produce the video, right? That technology is still not there, right? But the video transcript, right? So you can become creative. Actually, you may have been, I'm not very creative and all, but now you can be, right? You can, because it also depends on the creative prompt that you give, right? Cooking, right? You say what you have with you and ask it to, what can I make with this, cook with this, right? These are all Western things, right? So you say what you have and say, what can you make with this? Help me plan 1 week's worth of dinner. I'm a vegetarian who wants to involve pasta in this, something like that. I don't know. Okay, the last one. I have one. I only have 1,500 calories to eat. Suggest 10 different dishes I can eat this week without passing this threshold. Right. So you can get creative with this. Right? Most of these examples are because I've also got from the web. I mean, many of them are Western, right? My next talk should be make this localized. Travel. I'm planning to visit some place, right? What are some of the landmark sites I have to see? Or I have so much money. Can you plan a trip for me in this place, right? So you can try to do this in Sri Lanka and see kind of what kind of things it knows. Right. I want to take a short trip to Goa, but I don't know how to budget. Create a detailed budget for me. Like quite open-ended, right? And then you can fine-tune. If it gives something that you don't like, you can fine-tune, right? Right. And then you can do things. The persona, last one is a persona. Right? You give it a persona. Persona means personality, right? I want you to act as a travel guide. I will write you my location and you will suggest a place to visit near my location. In some cases, I will also give you the type of places I will visit. After that, every place you talk, it will say something to visit. Right. So I mean, there's no end to this, right? So here's like a why not ask ChatGPT to give us prompts, right? So here's an example. What are the 20 most out-of-the-box ChatGPT prompts that will show the power of AI, or something like this? You can go and see what it gives, and or you can say, give them most outrageous or creative, or you can say what kind of thing, and you don't have to say 20 if you want 100, but you can't try 100. After that, you want to try those, right? And you can modify and try those. You get the idea from those. That's an important point. Don't just copy and paste. You get the idea from those and then modify them and use them based on your experience, right? Because we don't want to base on ChatGPT experience only. Right. So people have tried to see, can we look at like the structure of a ChatGPT query, right? A prompt. So this is an example. I mean, everything is not like this, but it's one usable template. Act as someone to do something for, where you say to a 10-year-old or, to a school kid or to a primary kid, that one. You can say in some format also, in, I don't know, as poetry or in HTML, yeah, or in Python, yeah, you can generate code, right? I didn't go through that part very much, but you can generate code. So persona is something, I don't know, historian, movie critic, Einstein, English teacher, legal expert, and you can put a persona. Task, write an article, blog post, tweet, summarize, tweet, rewrite, code, visualize, things like that. Target audience, a beginner, college student, 5-year-old, or a grandmother, right? Explain deep learning to my grandmother. Right? Try and see what happens. So you're pretending to be the grandmother. You can learn a lot from those, actually. You can learn a lot from those. Output format, HTML, Python, Markdown, table, as a graph, as a Excel, as a... Actually, if you go into GPT-4, you can say as an image, right? Show something. I think Mid-Journey is anybody in graphics? Graphic design, right? If you're in it, then you should have an account on Mid-Journey, right? It's the top one. But GPT-4 also does some, and Dolly, like Wall-E the movie, is a Dolly, is the OpenAI's image generator. So I put at the bottom a list of lists of prompt engineering, right? By the way, are we making this available somewhere? Okay, right. So this link is probably a bit overwhelming because it summarizes different people's lists of things they have tried and done. What else can we do? There are some people here. Take a photo of the template, right? Okay. So you will be sent. Yeah. So what else? What else can we do with this stuff? For those who are in programming, you can use this kind of generative AI through APIs in your program code, right? So you can write a chatbot if you want, right? Where the backend is actually ChatGPT or something, right? The next level is you can fine-tune an open source large language model to solve your problem. It's interesting, right? We will see as time goes, a move from these generalized chatbots or chat programs to specialized ones, right? So for instance, someone comes to your website, IIT website, and asks, what are the courses I can do, blah, blah, blah. Normally we used to have FAQ, frequently asked question. No, now you can say, you can ask any question. And it's a fine-tuned to your domain, right? And then, of course, you may have to build, if you have enough money, build a domain-specific large language model. Sri Lanka badly needs a legal large language model. Can you imagine if you have a legal large language model, we don't have to depend. We still may need a lawyer, but we can beforehand get kind of advice. What we can tell the lawyer, right? Currently, we don't know anything, so we just rely on the lawyer, right? So this kind of black box in society is very dangerous. We have to open it, right? Clinical LLM, medical LLM. So we need a way. That's another black box, right? The doctor says this. Can you ask what? Why? Why are you giving? No. Domain-specific medical LLM, you can ask why. Why are you prescribing this? Or my doctor is prescribed this. Why is that? that kind of thing. So I think that's the direction for LLMs. Right, we are done. But before we go, I want to say, how should we think? Oh my gosh, I expired my time. There are, each of these slides is just a question that you take with you, right? And think about, right? How should I think? First, I hope after this lecture, you understand that ChatGPT is primarily a language model, right? It has been augmented with supervised fine-tuning, reinforcement learning with human feedback, and some tweaks to do mathematics and things like that. So what's the relationship between language and intelligence, right? Right. So there was a person whom I learned a lot of Linux from in Goa, actually. And so I thought this guy is a really brilliant computer scientist. And finally, I said, so what do you do? He said, I'm a tech journalist. I'm a technology journalist. He's a technology journalist, but from what he writes, indistinguishable from a computer science expert, right? So this language and intelligence is like really closely linked, which leads to this famous somebody called John Searle long ago said that these AI systems will be like this. What is like Chinese room. So his example was, there's a man in a room, right, who doesn't know Chinese. But he has one window through which he gets the query in Chinese. He doesn't know Chinese, but he has a lot of tables and charts and books and all. When he gets that input, he looks at all these books and all that, right? And then he gives the output also in Chinese, right? You got it. Right? He doesn't know Chinese, but there are a lot of instruction booklets and all kinds of things he has with him. So he gets this Chinese query. Nowadays, you don't have books, so maybe he has a computer and he puts that in, and then he gets an output and he gives it. And the man is happy. The Chinese man has got the answer and he goes. So his question was, did this guy in the room understand Chinese? His argument is that without understanding Chinese, he was able to respond in Chinese, right? There are some responses to this, counter arguments, but this is the core problem, the core question. And so we have to say, can compute, so we'll understand. ChatGPT can compute. Therefore, does it understand? I'm not answering that. I'm just asking, right? So currently, the big issue is that people are attributing sentience, consciousness, all kinds of things, personhood, right? He told this because some of the responses are fascinating. He couldn't have known if he was not conscious. They say that. So we have to be really now you know what inside this, what is there, right? So we have to, the closest it comes to is this, the idea of emergence. I said, emergent behavior is a little different to what we originally planned. So there is that, but so in January, there were 4 academic papers accepted by publishers. It's like, say, if I wrote it, Ruvan, Weerasinghe, and ChatGPT. Right? 4 of those accepted and published. But after that, all the editors got together and said this doesn't work because an author is responsible for what they write. But ChatGPT is not responsible, right? You can't say, oh no, that paper had that wrong thing, but that's not me. That's what ChatGPT. I can't say that, right? So today now everybody is using ChatGPT to write their papers, right? Articles. But the responsibility is yours, right? Responsibility is the humans, right? So you can use ChatGPT, but you can't say that's the one that made the mistake. And this carries to many other technologies like driverless cars, right? So driverless car, and you are there, and it hits somebody. Oh, I don't know. This thing hit it. Can you say that? Then who is responsible? The manufacturer or the designer or the person inside? Right? These are some of the legal questions that are being. So how should we think? Rethink the way we do your work. So this is really important. Right? You have to rethink the way we do our work. Right? It's like earlier we had to search for things, then the web came, you still had to search quite a lot. Then Google came and the search changed and so on. So now again the search has changed. Right? So our work will be always AI augmented. If you are afraid of that, just think about how do you go to an unknown place now? Unknown place, how do you go? You may still ask the friend, because you have to nagala, make it atanin bahala, hall deka gila, wamata gila. You may. But now don't you ask for a Google pin, Google map pin, right? And then you just go. Of course, don't do only that. Also ask for the street and the number, because where it detects is sometimes there are 2 roads, so you go around the wrong road, right? So, but that we are AI augmented, right? Already. How we just go to a place, right? Or using Google for, those days in my class in school, the guy who could tell the capital of Vanuatu was the genius. Today, everyone can just type and find it, right? So the nature of intelligence is changing, right? So increased productivity. Because increased productivity, less workers for current jobs. Clearly. Even software developers. We'll need less software developers because each software developer is now more productive, right? The market for productive software developers won't go down, but the market for software developers will go down. Or the market for graphic designers, because you need less of them, right? So there are several areas like this, right? So that we have to be mindful of. This is a little frightening. The kind of singularity appears to be approaching. That means, singularity is typically in physics, when you have these black holes. When you go to the black hole, everything changes. Every physical thing changes. No longer, none of the physical roles that we know will hold inside there. So it's called a singularity. We don't know beyond that. So this is a kind of technological singularity, right? When we are going there, it's not clear what will be called what is intelligence. These things are kind of redefined. But let's steer clear of attributing personhood and conscience and all that. But this knowledge, intelligence, cleverness, smartness, all those are being redefined. Right? So this calls for us reinventing ourselves. Who are we? Who is a human? Right? If ChatGPT can do these things, who am I? What's distinctive? What is special about me and you? So we have to ask some questions like that. And then there are many others. I've just put all in one slide, issues that we should care about. How to make AI more transparent. That means we don't want AI to be a black box. We want it to be able to explain, okay, why are you saying to do this? Or why did you do that? Or something like that, right? We have to always ask. Demand that guardrails are in place, right? That, so for instance, in ChatGPT, there are some guardrails, like for instance, otherwise, so you can't go and ask how to create a grenade or bomb or something like that, right? You can try those. Or like moral things, like bad things. It will say there are some guardrails like that. But we need more, right? We need more. So one of the things is people are saying these systems should not use the personal pronoun. I will tell you. Tell me. Some people are going to that extent because that makes, especially our children and all, will think this is a person. Right? So not to address AI with those personal pronouns or you, like that. Right? Even I have in my talk, I have used some of those. So those prompts are created like that, right? And to retain responsibility, agency with humans, right? You are not making them responsible and agent, giving them agency. Resist diminishing of biological human life. Right? These things can make others diminish. Right? So you can imagine if it can diminish us, then it can diminish, let's say, the old people. You are no longer relevant, or small kids, you don't know, or poor people. That's the last law. Ensure benefits to the vulnerable groups. Like some people are not going to be able to access this. Have you thought about that? Some people are not going to be. Currently, the language is an issue, right? But more than language, and bandwidth is an issue, right? Education level is an issue, right? So many vulnerable groups. So how do we ensure that benefits go to them also? Otherwise, we have that even a bigger effect, that digital divide, the haves and the have-nots. Right? So those who have this technology, they go up. Those who don't have, are forgotten. So these are like crucial things. So the bottom left graphic is about Hollywood. Hollywood, typically Hollywood shows AI as the Terminator, Terminator, that kind of, right? But it has created a few things like the left hand, Wall-E, or that Big Hero 6. Have you seen Big Hero 6? Yeah. So it has made a few like that, but by and large, it's the other one. So how do we deal with this? So I end with this slide. It's a blank. But we have to address, I didn't address this question, no? So fight it. Because some things I have said is like fight it, right? Fear it. Some things I have said is like fear it. Friend it. Some things I have said like friend it. So my view is we only need a small change in this title. Fight it, fear it, and friend it. Not all. So where we have to fight it. Where we have to fear, right? And put the guardrails. And where we have to friend it is where it can help not just ourselves, but society as a whole. Can we use this technology? You would have seen several examples of we can use it for not just our good, but so one thing could be you have a quota for every 100 queries, 100 prompts I put, I do 10 for someone else, not for myself. I don't know. Something like that. Okay, thank you. So we'll take questions. Actually, I've exceeded the question time, but we'll ask the boss whether we can take 15 minutes. Then another one soon after this. Right. So Achini will check whether there are questions online in the chat, and I will take the physical questions. Yeah. What I meant is end meaning after these people also go off. I mean, right at the end. Yeah. So during the break, Yeah. Reinforcement learning question, I said we will take after. Any other question? Yeah. Okay, so two parts to that question. The second part, if I forget, remind me. First part is that in a large language model for law or medicine, there may be something that basically it can hallucinate, right? These models can hallucinate. Hallucinate means they can, we don't know exactly what they are saying, right? So by all means, if you have access to a consultant, do it, right? If you have access to a top consultant, do it and use that as a definitive thing, right? But before you go to meet that consultant, check with the clinical language model, right? So you can ask intelligent questions, right? The big problem is that these black boxes are like guarded very carefully, right, by these professions. Same with law, right? These are guarded very carefully by these professions because so good alternative is to do your background homework and go to meet your lawyer. Do your background homework, go to meet your consultant, right? Definitely, finally, the responsibility, as I said, is not, you can't tell ChatGPT told me this, right? That's not because ChatGPT is not responsible, right? The second part is As I thought, I have forgotten. The second one was? Okay. Correct. So the idea that in a case, it's not only you, right? Or maybe it's not for you, for your friend, or so it's not only that person, there is another side, and maybe there are many other sides, right? The legal system works by, we get an advocate, we get a lawyer, right? And that lawyer is single focus is your client, right? So, but there's another lawyer. That lawyer single focus is that, and the legal system works by making sure that we don't leave any stone unturned. Like, we look at all the possibilities, right? So again, I think and in legal cases, again, I think we should use it to help maybe people, not ourselves, not when we get in trouble, right? But when we see injustice, I know we see a lot of injustice, right? And we see, so recently I have a person who has been put out of a job, right? Very unfairly, right? So how can I start helping that person, right? Because what that person says, is not a good defense, right? But can I get legal help? Maybe before going to a lawyer. And the big problem with that kind of person is that the kind of lawyer they can afford is, I mean, much worse than ChatGPT, right? Actually, right now, ChatGPT doesn't know Sri Lankan law, right? So I'm talking about a domain-specific Sri Lankan law. So that there's a lot of scope. Sri Lankan law is different to British law, US law, everything. So that's why there has to be domain-specific things. So the goal in domain-specific things for business is to make profits. But for these things, medical, legal, some things, is also for public good, right? We want to remove those black boxes, right? So that we can ask good questions from them. Actually, some of that research is going to the level of what should be there. So that is the type of thing that you were referring to. Still nowhere near that, but some research is focusing on from the judge's side. So give all the facts and what should the, what do you call that? Judgment be. What should the judgment? There are some research, but it's nowhere near that yet. So currently, in some countries, they are doing research where you can actually say, this is your case and how should you argue it. Thank you for those questions. Yeah. Yeah, so those terms that are closely linked with humans and personhood, we have to handle with care, because you can train a model to say, I empathize with you, right? Or even say that I am conscious, right? That doesn't mean it is conscious or empathetic, right? So, so this is where we have to have this this distinction between knowledge and knowledge and intelligence on one side, and what it means to be a human on the other side. right? So this interface is, I'm sure we are going to dissect it more and more and recognize more and more what is in the middle there, right? So currently these models are saying all this. Do they understand what they're saying? You should answer that question after listening to this talk. Do you think they understand what they're saying? They appear to be. They appear to be. Right? Yeah, so that's a big question, and I think we have to be on guard when people use some of these terminologies, conscience, self-awareness, these things. They are also talking about AI rights already. AI, and if you look at it, as long as it's on my computer, a web interface, or even like a machine robot, we don't feel that argument so much. But when you see it like Sophia, no? Sophia, the humanoid. So as soon as we put a human-like face and with actuators to control the face, suddenly it kind of hits us. Maybe Sophia has to have rights, and so Saudi Arabia went and gave Sophia, I mean, that was just a gimmick, I think, gave citizenship to Sophia, right? So that's just marketing and stuff like that. But I think those are dangerous. Yes, somebody else put a hand up. Yes. Using it for our creative things, yes. Yeah, so again, it has two parts. I think the first part is about creative things, right? Creative activities like writing poetry, songs, things like that, art, right? So these have two parties, right? The creator and the consumer is not a good word, but you know, the person who the one who can appreciate that, right? So that second thing is retained in ChatGPT or Midjourney or whatever. But the first thing is lost, and I agree. So the first thing, it's that process that gives the creator that sense of satisfaction and, you know, or whatever the emotion, right? And that's taken away. So no longer, well, I'm not saying that's taken away. I think these creative people should continue to do that, right? Because for them is useless using these tools, because they won't get the same kind of satisfaction that they get by creating it. Of course, maybe there is a way of combining, right? So like how people enhance digital art with, you know, either draw and then enhance it digitally, or do it digitally and enhance manually. There are lots of things like that. The second one is about time, and I think I agree. All these technologies are reducing the time to think, right? As well as they are reducing not just individuals' time, they're reducing society's time. And that's why we still don't have, from not just AI, from many technologies, we don't have ethics and we don't have laws, right? Law and ethics come far behind. And so now with AI, that gap has really widened because people are not sure. Like if you can actually ask, I think at one of the interviews, Sam Altman, who is the CEO of OpenAI, had said, I quite don't understand how this happens. Some particular question in that, right? So that that means if we don't understand how something happens, then we can't begin to think about the ethics and the legal side of those things. So that's definitely a danger sign, and that's some area where those who are aware, and now each of you have to be alert, right? And get involved in like making sure that particularly the vulnerable groups will not be even more vulnerable. Yeah, so thank you for that question. Sorry, I should have actually told the question online and then answered, but when that's what happens when there's a physical audience. Any other? Yes. Okay, so the question. Okay, the question is how can we learn the maths and engineering and the technology behind this kind of tool? We may have to take it offline, but one thing I tell our students is no longer can you say, my teacher didn't teach me, right? This was even true for the last 10 years at least, with Coursera and things there, right? So I remember my son came and said, you know, I don't know, he's teaching something, but it's not clear, the lecturer. But one day he managed to find the book he seems to be referring. So he said, this author, so I searched online and I found you all are better than me at finding pirated copies of books. And then suddenly he said, oh, this is the thing. But he can even say that the lecturer has misunderstood something from the book when they're teaching, right? So with this technology now, absolutely no excuse for people to learn by themselves, right? But there's a huge cultural chasm that we have to jump, you know, to transfer ownership for learning to humans, to students, because they think it's a teacher's responsibility. So even this, obviously you can fast track by maybe going to some courses and so on, but technically it is possible to even learn that using a prompt, right? Like that, you know, give me a 10-week lesson plan to learn ChatGPT, technologies behind ChatGPT, with pointers to resources or something. I haven't tried, but you can try. And of course, there are formal programs also that will have that. Some aspect of that, I think PDU is planning some aspect of that in their programs. Okay. Nothing online, no online questions. Oh, okay. Sorry. I have missed the online questions. Right. Q&A, there's a chat also. Does GPT-4 LLM continuously improve via ChatGPT interactions? Does that mean we, as a nation, can improve with single capabilities? Okay, good question. So one of the things that GPT-4, one of the problems with ChatGPT is that its information, its data is limited to 2021, right? And that has been overcome in many new LLMs, including GPT-4. So how do we improve certain capability like Sinhala capability or I don't know, Sri Lankan law capability and so on. So each of these people will have different ways of doing it. The standard way of improving is with that thumbs up or thumbs down, right? So thumbs up and thumbs down is the standard way in which this is accomplished. If there is a different way, then you will have to see, you will have to go to them, like whether either OpenAI or Google or whatever, and say, how can we, instead of that, because that's a very slow process, like each query, and you say thumbs up or thumbs down, that's the standard way. But you can say maybe, okay, how can we provide more data? They will be very happy because they want more data, right? And already the Google Bard, its language capabilities are a bit better than ChatGPT because, as we know, Google has more language resources than any other big player. How ChatGPT learns from users' interaction? Yeah, so user interaction, again, it's reinforcement learning with human feedback. The exact details is beyond the scope of this talk. This is an awareness talk, but every time you press the thumbs up on ChatGPT, you are giving it some reinforcement. Thumbs down also, you are giving it some reinforcement. So there may be a different question. How does it rely on us? Right? That's a good question. We can purposely try to say thumbs down for a good one and thumbs up for a bad one, right? So it relies on that, that the majority, you will get some odd people who do that, but the majority will not do that. Actually, I think majority are not doing either up or down. They're just waiting, right? But in some cultures, they want to support, so they will give the interaction. So if you want to support and give the interaction, then generally they will give it in the correct way. What is the new definition of intelligence if ChatGPT can answer and produce articles? Okay, good question, right? What's the new definition of intelligence? Actually, intelligence definition has changed. As I said, when I was small, the guy in the class who knew answers to, the population of a country or a capital of a country was the intelligent person, right? So no longer. So similarly, that's ChatGPT is taking us to another level. And since it's creative also, within quotes, since it's creative, since it appears to be also able to do creative tasks, now this is the area, as I said, we have to unpack what is intelligence. We have to unpack what is consciousness. We have to unpack what is personhood, right? Since these things are only coming to us in these last few months, I think we have also not had time to think about this deeply, right? Still, AI cannot create things. We can consider ability to create artifacts as the measure of intelligence. Yeah, AI cannot create things. Well, AI can create music and poems and stories. At the moment, it can't create, I suppose, physical things. There are so many hundreds of projects now. I won't be surprised if there is somebody doing a ChatGPT 3D printing interface, right? Which means so that boundary also will be passed, right? But as I said, one key thing is this so-called the way these systems understand is different to the way we understand. And so some people say that without sensory input, these tools are limited. Like we have sensory input, at least 5 sensors, sometimes the 6th one, right? But these systems currently are only either text, images, or sound, right? So, and then some people say without a biological kind of existence, they will never understand something. How can we become better at prompt engineering? Yeah, I hope you can try some of these things and then improve. And I think there are many resources now online that help you to do that. Yeah, people seem to have questions in the chat as well. Okay, it's about, but there are some people who used ChatGPT as a language model. It's amazing, but not as a problem solver. I'm not convinced it made many apologies to me. Yeah, it apologizes. So it has a persona. It has a default persona, which is very polite, right? It apologizes when it makes a mistake, right? So the common mistakes, you tell it to do generate some code. You take the code and put it in interpreter or compiler, and it gives an error. And you put the error in, and it says, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, and it corrects itself, right? Now that's also quite powerful, right? And so there is some work that is going on to get it to reflect on its own output before outputting. I mean, so it outputs its first thing, and then it gets so that it won't give you that answer and then say sorry. It is supposed to reflect on its own output and then say something. So there's some research in that area also. Yeah, ChatGPT is only up to September 2021. Humans can distinguish themselves from machine-created intelligence, which is a mirage of emergent complexity, by using human wisdom. Okay, very good. This is what I was talking about. If you judge only by output, it looks intelligent. How can we be better at prompt engineering like any of the courses for? Yeah, loads and loads. If you just type prompt engineering, or I mean, why not try to ask ChatGPT, can you point me to resources about prompt engineering? I mean, I'm sure there'll be a lot of good ones. Does GPT sort of formulate the questioner's personality character by listening to chain of past questions and answers? Now, that's a good question, Vincent. Does ChatGPT sort of formulate the questioner's personality or character by listening to a chain of past questions and answer accordingly? The only thing is that, so if you go to Bard right now, it's responding very much faster than ChatGPT, but you can see very clearly its memory is limited. So if you give it a persona and try to query it soon loses that. Whereas ChatGPT is having a longer memory. I haven't tested how long, or what happens when that runs out and so on. I haven't tested, but yeah. So I think it's different to this what we used to call user modeling, right? We used to call user modeling in database, or in several fields. This is a bit different, but it knows the previous questions you've asked, so it will answer in that context, right? So that's why if you ask it to be a dictionary and so on, after that you have to only give one word, right? Another word and another word, and it gives responses according to the instructions. Right, thank you. I think there are no more questions. We can of course talk personally. Thank you to all who joined online too. Have a good day.